I despise this bastardized adaptation of Max Brooks' novel, so different from its source material that he distanced himself from it. It wasn't a zombie movie. Depth, commentary, gore, survival, and most importantly, horror, common in the zombie genre, were stripped off the reanimated bone. To make it marketable to a family demographic, Paramount cast the wide net of the PG-13 rating, and it worked for them, standing as the most profitable zombie movie of all time at $540 million. Now, if you like it, knock yourself out. I'm not going to stop you from doing that. But for me, instead of a thought-provoking piece on how the world would turn against the zombie threat and the people would adapt to the undead, or having a bloody fun give fest, we got what was it again, Brad?
There's always you suspend a bit of plausibility for these summer films, and what if we could ground it in reality, make it feel very visceral?
Excuse me, but plausibility and visceral, aren't those just buzzwords that dumb people use to sound important? Every time I end up watching the movie, there is always another summer blockbuster that comes to my mind, drawing many parallels in the respective genres that under the microscope puts them as basically the same movie with a few minor tweaks here and there. I'm talking about WWZ as a parallel, or more so, a diluted copy of the movie 2012, the 2009 disaster movie about the Mayan calendar predicting the end of the world. How does an epic science fiction disaster film correlate with a big budget zombie film starring 2000's sexiest man alive? What do I mean by all that? Well, today we are discussing why World War Z is just the movie 2012, but with zombies. When stepping into the theater, the first taste of what you'll get out of a movie that you have no reference of or for are the posters. Promotional art is a good way to both summarize and also have you wondering what comes out of the motion picture. 2012 did that pretty well, showing LA divided by earthquakes, tilting into the sea, tsunamis swallowing the Himalayas. It's a disaster film of apocalyptic levels. No matter how bad the script is, it hits the key moments of the film while leaving the rest to mystery. World War Z, on the other hand, lacks that and just puts either Brad Pitt looking over a destroyed skyline or a horde of humans cluttering a helicopter. What screams zombie movie to you here? You could literally take the posters of Brad Pitt looking out over the horizon at a zombie-infested city and Photoshop anything from 2012's posters and it would be the same. I mean, look at this. Bam, World War Z. Bam, 2012. Bam, we change the skyline. Bam, change it again. Bam, change it again. What screams zombie about some 2012 looking poster with 1995's sexiest man alive taking up 40% of the screen? You could say the posters with the zombies clambering over each other to get to the helicopter is a good example of showing that it is a zombie movie. I mean, but is it really? Unless you saw the trailers back in 2013 on YouTube, you wouldn't make that connection. Can this mass of silhouettes be construed as zombies at a first glance? It looks just like an amped up version of the real life chopper evacuation of the US Embassy in Saigon decades ago. The shots of the undead or infected dogpiling towards the helicopter could just be people stepping over each other wanting to be saved via a rescue chopper, not the undead piling up like ants attacking a whirlybird. It literally looks like any other disaster film on the global scale when you look at it at first, because the zombie threat is so diluted that it could easily be replaced with any other kind of wide-scale destruction, and that is the general point I will be trying to make throughout this video. So how do they compare as movies in general? It's the plot starting with a ham-fisted message, a shallow cast of characters, location hopping across the world while large-scale calamities consume it in very similar ways, with a dad at the center of it being a quote-unquote bad ass. World War Z is 2012 if the fat was trimmed, running everything that 2012 has through a zombified TikTok filter. 2012 spends its first 40 minutes talking about the incoming danger of the Mayan prophecy, a bit too into detail and bloating the runtime. World War Z elects to do this, but at a speed run pace. By trying to do a Dawn of the Dead 2004-like intro, using random news and Animal Planet footage to start things off to try and sound uneasy and profound about humanity and our numbers and the impact on the planet, but at the same time, it has really no bearing on the zombie virus at all. Really, it's just being an incoherent mess of imagery slapped together with audio bringing up doomsday and illness, all so we can cut to the chase of the threat appearing in only 7 minutes. Both conflicts start in Los Angeles and Philadelphia respectively, involving a family of 2 children getting away from the danger that is killing everyone around them just in the nick of time, having a little girl stopping everything to say and do some stupid shit.
My house! I want my blanket! My blanket!
Both dads will just gawk at the force of nature as it is consuming everything around.
7, 10.
Before commandeering a high occupancy vehicle. These families are also the only people to think to use vehicles to get away instead of just randomly running around screaming. 2012 makes it a 5-minute huge spectacle of special effects in 2009 CGI. A limo being grandiose and driving away from an earthquake, avoiding falling vehicles through buildings, and more. World War Z does a 2-minute frenzy of one guy turning and a bunch of people diving on top of each other in a motion blur mess. The zombies literally being swarms that we barely see up close and are more in line with 2012's natural disaster aerial shots. They're looking like a bunch of just water flooding in throughout the city, but it's just a bunch of people. But with World War Z, we just get a lot more of... Entering phase 2 of their escape, World War Z again trims some of the Mayan fat. Both dads have career-related connections that can get them and their families to safety. Jackson is a writer, but more importantly, a chauffeur for a Russian billionaire, knowing one of his pilots. Jerry is a former UN investigator who's called back to duty, but first, they have to get to a proper air rescue vehicle. 2012, Jackson gets his divorced family plus his ex-wife's husband to a private plane and then escape the city like a hedgehog on an adventure to battle. Another grandiose display of the plane twin-towering through the sinking city. World War Z, Jerry stops for albuterol and loses the RV that he had previously stolen. Both movies have this brief respite of time to breathe. Jackson has his ex's husband fly them to Yellowstone National Park to fuel up the plane and procure a map of the end-of-the-world arcs that were mentioned by a conspiracy hippie played by Woody Harrelson. Jerry holds his family up in nearby apartments with a Hispanic family waiting for a UN chopper to come and rescue them from the rooftop. While their plans are set and they begin to move, the threats suddenly burst forth, forcing everyone to run, narrowly escaping via their respective airborne vessels. Funnily enough, there are a few parallels leading up to these moments. Both of the fathers lose RVs that they had stolen from dead men. Weight Watchers Z does some more weight watching with 2012's content. While Jerry gets an instant shortcut for his family to a government ship, Jackson has to fly all the way to Las Vegas where his Russian billionaire boss is. Thanks to some coercing, Jackson uses his ex-wife's husband as a bargaining chip to get on a big-ass plane for him to pilot. So we get safety of one through government security and the other through a rich Russian paying billions to the government to save himself. So, tomato, tomato. Once aboard each vessel, the plane and ship respectively, we find out that the President of the United States had died just beforehand. We get government heads disconnected from the family debating on what to do about the worldwide crisis. What is causing the sudden collapse of society and what they can do? Reports come flooding in of major cities falling left and right. A majority of them are in denial about the hidden truth that is now blatantly in their face.
You all read the same email I did, and it said zombies.
Religious denominations have taken their message of the end of the world to the streets all over the U.S.
Kind of galling when you realize that nutbags with the cardboard signs had it right the whole time.
All these people out there, sir. Should we be issuing warnings now?
only when the boarding process is complete.
Jerry is then tasked with going to South Korea based on memos that had the first mention of zombies. So, what does he do? He gets on a big-ass plane, similar looking to the plane in 2012, to travel across the ocean. The Jackson 5 and the Russians head to the Himalayas at the same time. Both jumbo birds then have to land in a dark, wet, cold Asian setting. Once they get landside, Jerry loses his top virologist due to slipping on some water and icing himself, while Sasha, the pilot, stays in the plane and dies on ice. After this, armed soldiers come running to their aid. Jackson and his family learn that they are being left behind because they do not have green cards worth $1 billion apiece and lose hope at salvation. With his family safe on a ship, Jerry learns the aforementioned zombies at the South Korean base were all incinerated, with the doctor that brought the disease back is long dead, also losing hope at some kind of prevention for the zombie outbreak. The Jackson family are picked up by a Buddhist monk family, who coincidentally have a relative that can give them access into the Arks. Jerry learns from an insane CIA officer that he too must travel somewhere else that was never part of the plan, Jerusalem. Before then, Jerry mirrors 2012's Yellowstone scene as a botched stealth fuel-up has nearly everyone die getting him there as he learns to fly the plane on, well, the fly, with zombies nipping at their heels before getting away and easily to his next far-off location. Jerusalem is stated to be the only city on Earth to successfully ward off the Zeeks, as thousands had previously poured in to survive. The 2012 Arks in the Himalayas made by many countries are stated to be the only chance of humanity surviving the apocalypse, as thousands fled to their gates. Both of these giant refuges, the major city of Israel and the high peaks of the Tibetan Plateau, are sacred sites revered across many religions around the globe, and both become integral to humanity's survival in different ways. It's in Jerusalem that Jerry sees the last bastion of mankind fall, as the noise created allows the zombies to turn into what I can only describe as rising waters breaking through the dam of the religious Mecca. In both films, we see major religious institutions becoming overrun and destroyed. Jerusalem is swarmed by zombies like a flood, and the Vatican decimated by earthquakes, both to hit audiences with the biblical imagery of the end of days. The zombie flood pouring over buses and crashing around corners like violent waves. A bit on the nose flooding of the earth, just replace water with teeth-clacking, blurry, chameleon-eyed Zeeks. Juxtapose that with the Arks that 2012 has been leading up to as the only hope of humanity's continued existence. Noah's Ark being that which saved all life on Earth in the Bible. Amongst the zombie flood, Jerry witnesses multiple times how the infected completely avoid the sick and dying. We really got a chemo patient pulling a Moses parting the Dead Sea here, but he starts to get into the major turning point against the undead. It's another parallel that the dead are swarming inside the once religious safe haven in World War Z, while the living on 2012 are clustering up outside the closing doors of the fourth Ark. Funnily enough, even having some people fall to their deaths like they are some Zeeks as they try to get in. Thanks to some good old plot armor and connections, both the Jackson family and Jerry avoid the chaos and get to safety as everyone else is left behind in blurry human CGI glory. Inside the aircraft and seacraft, both vessels have increasingly urgent issues that could cause them to be destroyed and or overwhelmed. The fourth Ark debates on opening its doors to hundreds of more people while a mega tsunami rapidly is approaching. The airplane has one of its cabins then completely dominated by Zeeks. The zombies are alerted by a noise and spur a plane to Cardiff, while the Ark doors are opened to a swath of panicking people. Both are now full of swarms of humans with no real way of managing them. It's because of rich refugees and some zombies, on top of the main characters of both movies having some kind of involvement into why things critically malfunction. Because of the Jackson family and the Buddhist family, the Ark door does get jammed. Because of Brad Pitt having to clear the infected out of the airplane, he has to chuck a frag grenade and cause the cabin to burst open. As the plane empties itself of its flood-like zombies, the flood of the mega tsunami comes gushing into the Ark. Both vehicles are on the brink of collapse, thanks to water. Except replace the water of 2012 with zombies in World War Z. Zombies are water, man! Jerry's plane, while ejecting all of its Zambos, is forced to crash land in the city of Cardiff in the UK, making it to his destination of the WHO research facility but passing out. The fourth Ark is forced to go with the tide, and unless a jam is cleared and the doors can be shut, the entire ship will crash land right into Mount Everest. Jerry is awoken and tells researchers he thinks a deadly but curable disease, when injected, could work as camouflage for the living from the dead. An untested and dangerous theory that requires both getting a lethal pathogen in the zombie-infested B-Wing building and then injecting it directly into the body. So, Jerry volunteers himself for the suicide mission. Aboard the Ark, Jackson is told that a jam in the gears of the door his group made must be manually removed by hand in order to stop the flooding, shut the doors, and prevent everyone on board the ship from being crushed by a mountain. So, Jackson volunteers himself for the suicide mission. It's here that both fathers must become badasses. Jerry already kissed his wife and kids goodbye before heading to South Korea. Jackson, with the other dad, the stepdad crushed by the gears, kisses his soon-to-be remarried wife and kids goodbye. Jerry, assisted by a soldier he saved and a researcher, is chased by a flood of undead as he gets to the virological sample room by himself. Jackson dives deep into flooding waters to unsnag the power cable and tools from the hydraulics. Assisted by his son, they clear the door for it to close and prevent the mountain crash. Jackson stays behind in the cold waters to ensure things continue working. Jerry and Jackson both staying amidst a flood, working with dangerous components to make sure the worldwide peril could no longer threaten the remnants of humanity. Jerry inoculated himself and walked before a horde, not knowing if his hypothesis would come to pass, not knowing if the flood of zombies would turn him into a beefcake buffet. Jackson did not know if the rising waters and a jam of a gigantic starship-like sea craft could be done, or if he would meet the same fate as the current husband of his ex-wife that she forgot about in a few minutes. Neither knew they would make it back from the deluge of flood and zombie. But you know what? They did! Hurrah! Who would have guessed? Both of them unharmed and both taking a deep breath after taking in some cold liquid.
You're the Pepsi generation.
With their missions complete, we get about a few-week time skip. Both movies note a stark change in their global threats. The waters of worldwide flooding have begun to recede in 2012, allowing the majority of humanity to find new refuge in Africa. Due to Jerry's discovery of terminal illnesses that no one else worldwide could have ever found out, the infection numbers begin to simmer down. Cities are still reported overrun with dormant zombies, but things are starting to change. Both fathers know that they have saved the day, reuniting with their families, with a new addition to their families, one with a dog and one with a Hispanic kid, and both the movies ultimately saying there is still work to be done. It's too bad we never got World War Z 2 or 2013. Both happy endings with sunsets and togetherness, where the characters hopped all over the world to go against doomsday events and still come out on top, with the catastrophes basically doing the same thing, and in some cases involving flooding, even modern moderately looking the same. All the chaos condensed into a PG-13 rating as a summer blockbuster disaster movie for the whole family to enjoy. There were zombie-esque parts to World War Z that Brad Pitt had to ward off, but most of it could have been replaced with a dust cloud or flooding waters from 2012, and the effect would be nearly the same, minus risk of infection, and the few scenes in the apartment playing in the Who building where they remembered that they should have close-ups of the main threat of the movie, zombies. There was just a lot of constant flying away from threats as we see thousands of CGI people at ground level. World War Z doesn't make too much of an effort to discern who's infected or not and make it discernible, and most of the shots of chaos and destruction could be interchanged between both 2012 and World War Z. The characters and motivations of World War Z just being 2012, but shortened, condensed, filtered, and made into more blurry and badass moments. Most zombie scenes in the first half of World War Z are just people flailing around in the background while the camera violently shakes around. At least with 2012, we can stay on target and see the threat in all of its glory, but then in World War Z, we get this erraticness and motion blur of the zombies, making me wonder how World War Z had a budget of over $60 million more than 2012. World War Z sets itself up for a non-existent sequel showing various countries with either dormant infected just sitting around like shallow water in some cities, while others show people fighting back randomly against non-moving targets. 2012, randomly throughout the movie, had various landmarks being decimated by the Mayan prophecy. World War Z only had something from Jerry's perspective while he experienced a few bad instances in a few cities, and then at the very end of the movie decided, oh yeah, this is World War Z, so let's just now decide to show the rest of the world. And basically just did all of 2012's destruction scenes at the end, but more as the after effects of the global chaos. The zombies were mostly there to be forces of nature, just like the catastrophes throughout 2012. World War Z sometimes had claustrophobic and feral encounters akin to a common movie in the zombie genre, but for a majority of the movie, World War Z was just 2012 with zombies. Well, that ends this doomsday comparison of cheesy action thriller films. What do you think? Was I drawing comparisons out of nothing? Is there something you want to add to the discourse? Am I just stupid? Let me know down below. Chip in a buck or something over on my Patreon or YouTube channel memberships to be on this list here. Thanks to Chago for editing this video together. Support the channel by using code WOW at GamerSupps to get 10% off your order, and maybe I'll get my own flavor in Waifu Cup to hopefully make it Left 4 Dead inspired. Until next time, I'm Zackass, aka Wow Such Gaming. Never forget to stay happy, stay healthy, and most importantly, stay wow.